My name is Elizabeth Awai, and then today we will be going through together, you and I, through the parts to learn, to get educated, and of course to get entertained. The focus for today is the burden of drug use in Nigeria. It is a sad story because last year I was listening to the DG, and he mentioned about 15 million people are using this, and it's sad. Most of them are youths. What are we going to do? What are the consequences? Why are we even getting involved in this? It's a sad situation, but we intend to move around Nigeria to get to find out what the prevalence is, what we are doing wrong, and what we should actually do right to ensure that we move out from that and move to the right part. Oftentimes we are told that we live in a free world and that we are in charge of our lives. That's true, really, but I have actually looked at it and I tell myself it's not exactly so, because whatever I do to myself, it is also of consequence to the next person besides me. Perhaps that's why we say that where my freedom stops, another person's begins. So we must be responsible for what we ingest, because if we don't do it well, it turns out negatively on ourselves and of course on people around us. What am I talking about? Burden of drugs. Drugs may be essential for certain things, but when they are wrongly used, it becomes a problem to the society. But knowing all of this, how much of it are we imbibing to ensure that we have sanity in the society? I don't think we are doing enough. That is a thrust for today. But let's join Francis Ogbe to get to find out the burden of drug use in Nigeria.
One of the emerging global public health issues is drug abuse. The recent World Drug Report 2019 of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimated that 271 million of the global population aged between 15 and 64 years had used drugs in the previous years. Also, it has been projected that 35 million individuals will be experiencing drug use disorder.
Drug abuse is the use of illegal substance. Now, it doesn't matter what you take, so long as you take excess or you take what is not supposed to be prescribed, then it is illegal. Now, the substance are of different categories. We have the heroin, we have the cannabis, we just have them in different forms, And then there's also the use of prescribed drugs, drug that you buy over the counter. If an individual is being prescribed with a particular medication and then he gets used to it and becomes addicted and then he starts using it, then it's abuse as well.
The story is not different in Nigeria, as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has said that 14.4% of Nigerians are presently engaged in drug abuse, and this portends a negative trend to the future of the country. 27.7% of the 14.4% of those concerned were youth, and 1 in every 10 drug users is a woman.
It could be as a result of, I just want to try it. It could be peer pressure. It could be lack of parental guide. It could also be as a result of personality issues, especially in the social circle.
Women have always abused the drug. It's just that they are getting more enlightened and they are emboldened now, and they can volunteer more information compared to the recent past. Why, if you ask me, why are they using drug? Yes, for the same reasons why the general population will use drug. However, we know that women are more prone to some of the precursor events, that leads to drug use.
Nigeria is a diverse country with over 400 ethnic groups. Consequently, most societies do not consider the use of some drugs which do not produce overt behavioral changes as drug abuse.
A place in Jos in Plateau State, there's this substance they call goskolo. Now, the substance base, the solvent base for that goskolo is alcohol. And because alcohol is licit in Nigeria, if any law enforcement agent apprehend them for abusing goskolo, they just say, it's alcohol because it is licit. But they have added us other substances, however, to get the fulfillment, the feelings they want to get out of it. Now, these are some of the challenges of our law enforcement agent as to cultural boundaries on what is moral or what is not moral.
Government is not unaware of this challenge as it has announced a ban on the production and importation of cough syrup containing codeine after a British Broadcasting Corporation BBC's documentary investigation into its role in an addiction epidemic.
There are specific areas that you go to and you find these things being sold there. So you would tell me that, does it mean that government does not pass around this place? If I see it every day and I see a vehicle parked that looks like a government car, do you want to tell me that they don't see these things? They see it. They know. So maybe they need to do more. That's what I think. They need to do more. It's never enough. And ways to do more. To shut down those places. They sell those things openly. I've driven there so many times and they would call me and say, Madam, stop. So you see, there's some people that can actually just want to taste it. Maybe because I haven't tried it. But doesn't mean that everybody who has passed that road has not been one day, called and for whatever reason he just said, okay, let me stop. Because I tell you, to be honest with you, curiosity. A lot of people just want to, let me even try this thing out of curiosity.
Nigeria is not just a transit, but a manufacturing country and consuming country. So that means beyond your borders, within your country, they are being produced. Of course, we have marijuana being produced in Nigeria. So NDLA men are not enough to man all of these checkpoints in checking these traffickers.
Drug abuse has been a cause of many criminal offenses. Therefore, the need for collaboration among stakeholders cannot be overemphasized.
It is important that parents begin to check their children. Make sure that for every time they're back from school or while in school, check what they're doing, the friends they keep, the things they watch, who they see as their role model. Do all of those background check. It is very important.
Most of the times, people had to wait on the queue before they get admitted into rehab centers. And for example, we have about 250 trained psychiatrists in Nigeria. This is according to the Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria. So that means the demand is high, supply is low. Naturally, the cost for treatment will tend to rise.
Our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on curbing the spread of drug abuse in Nigeria.
I want to believe that all parents who are watching us at this moment have actually called out their children to sit tight and watch with us, because this is one menace that every single home may face if you don't take time. It's important we become friends with our children, get to know what they're doing and guide them aright. But speaking of that, a lot of times we send children to go buy drugs and we think that they're just buying drugs. They may not know what it is. Even when those drugs are controlled, it's important we desist from that. But then asking that question, what is a controlled drug, is important. Let's join NTA Abuja to find out what really are the controlled drugs here in Nigeria.
The control of drugs through law exists to protect people from the harm that these drugs can cause. The federal government announced a ban on the importation of 17 categories of pharmaceutical products under the 2005 fiscal policy measures and tariff amendments. Despite the ban, these drugs are still used regularly. How are the drugs smuggled into the country? Are the pharmacies guilty? What are the authorities doing wrong?
The healthcare need of our population is huge. We don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough pharmacists, we don't have enough trained personnel to meet that demand. Even though, we have a system that can work and we don't have enough manpower, you have to start making concessions. And so you start having to, train and authorize patent medicine stores and chemists and whatnot. The distribution chain is not very tight. So you cannot guarantee, for example, that it's only pharmacies that are selling drugs. You have people peddling drugs on their heads, hawking drugs in the car parks and on the streets. So people who cannot speak English, cannot read and write, how would they even know that you've said something is banned and that it should be recalled? How did they even get the drugs in the first place? If people are educated enough to know that no, this is not a good source for their drugs, then those sources will dry up ultimately. So what usually happens is that NAFDAC notifies all the does a recall of those products so that they are not left in the market. They're returned and they are destroyed. So if for any reason they are out there, of course there are punitive measures that are taken by the regulatory agencies. But then it's important for people to be informed. Of course the prescribers should be aware, the dispensers should be aware, the end users should be aware. Usually for pharmacists, the training is such that we are so aware, we are so keenly aware of the risk, the hazards. We're always taught in school that, look, a doctor can make a mistake and kill one person. If you're producing, you make a mistake, you can kill the whole nation, depending on what kind of product you're making and all that. So unfortunately, there are many other people who are involved in the whole distribution chain that may not necessarily have that commitment to the ethics of the profession.
An African Eye reporter produced a vivid and explicit documentary for the BBC. She tagged Sweet Sweet Codeine on the abuse of codeine, an opiate and pro-drug used in the treatment of pain, coughing and diarrhea, which eventually transformed into a drug monster.
For benylin with codeine, in itself there's nothing wrong with that drug, but it was at a point it was being sold as an OTC, which means over the counter, as an OTC drug, which means that you didn't need a prescription to buy it. Wow. And people were doing crazy things. The intention of the drug is very good, okay, because the codeine helps to reduce, there's something called the cough center in the brain, so it helps to reduce the stimulation of the cough center so that you are not coughing. So what I don't know is how the abusers do their own research and find out what does what. Before you knew what was happening, people were buying whole bottles, 2 bottles, 3 bottles, and downing the whole thing at once, taking excessive doses, having harmful effects, getting high, Similar things happen with tramadol as well. Whether they are still banned, as far as I know, yes. You have a drug like gentamicin. Gentamicin is an antibiotic, okay? It's an aminoglycoside. It's a good drug in itself. But then it comes in different strengths. So you had the 10 milligram, 20 milligram, 40 milligram, 80 milligram, and the 280 milligram. Now, 280 milligram was found to be too high and was causing kidney issues. And so that was withdrawn. It doesn't mean gentamicin in itself is bad. Other strengths are still very good, are still very efficacious. You have rosiglitazone, which is a diabetic drug, was eventually found to be quite harmful, and was stopped. I remember there was a case with Novalgin, Analgin, Novalgin. There was a temporary ban for about 2 years of one of the components of that drug. But eventually it was found that no. Several researches were done in India and different places to find out and saw that no, there's nothing wrong with it. So the companies that made Novalgin, you now see NGC Valgin and stuff like that, because they've now rebranded it and it's the same product and it's fine, it's safe. I think NAFDAC really is trying, with curbing the entry. The trouble is what of the ones that are already in the system. I think that's where the challenge is, especially for things that are freshly banned. Yes. So for many of these drugs, you're talking of things that were banned maybe like 2007, 2009. You're not likely to find them in the system now because more people are aware that they are banned.
The abuse of prescription drugs is so rampant and has gone beyond codeine. It has become a disturbing trend among youths in Nigeria.
And joining me in the studio now is the media person of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agents in the person of Femi Babafemi.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Now, last year, I was listening to your Director General when he talked about the prevalence in Nigeria, about more than 15 million persons are into drug use, and a lot of them youth. Do we have the records, on the lower side as we speak today?
Well, that information was based on the National Drug Survey carried out in 2018, and which puts the population of drug users in Nigeria at 14.3, which by now definitely would have been more than that, because
that's sad.
Because when you look at that particular survey, it basically captured those within the age bracket of 15 to 64. Now these days we have discovered that even those far younger than 15, you see children of 8, 9, 10, 12.
8?
Yeah.
8?
Absolutely. Abusing drugs. You mentioned something in the course of this program that you have parents who send their kids worlds to go and buy these drugs, and these children, they're in one corner looking at you, how you take these drugs. Definitely they have that feeling that their parents must be enjoying something in these drugs. And when you are done leaving some remnants on the table, you move out, they go there to check, to have a taste. If it's alcohol or cannabis or cigarettes, they start from there, and the whole thing builds up to, over time they become dependent. So what I'm saying is, these days, even now, from the records of our arrests and operations across the country, we have younger people who are now being used to even traffic to peddle. You understand? You see secondary school pupils who are being used by cartels to move these drugs around, with the hope that law enforcement, like NDLA, will probably not will underrate them, not check them, but then unfortunately for them, we're getting quite a number of them, and we're treating them, we're attending to them.
I'd like to know, is there a relationship between the ongoing rise in kidnapping and drug use?
Absolutely. I think one of the first things that General Marwa established when he came on board this time last year was the nexus between drug abuse, the prevalence of drug abuse in the country, and the security challenges we have across the country. Whether you talk of terrorism in the northeast, banditry in the northwest, kidnapping for ransom in the north central and other parts of the country, including what is happening in the southeast, all of that. You see, no normal human being will go out to schools, or even the one that just happened in Kano, the killing of the 5-year-old. No person in his sane mind would do all of that without something propelling, mind altering substance. So definitely there is a strong nexus. Beyond this, we've been able to also establish that because of information from our security forces in the front line, you will see there have been that report that when they clear camps occupied by bandits or Boko Haram insurgents, they find remnants of drugs. There are packets that have been used, those that have not been used. That says something. Beyond that, those that have gone into the camps of these people to meet with them, they have also given reports that in the course of even being in the camp of these people, they see them perpetually injecting themselves with drugs or popping cannabis pills and what have you. Beyond that, those that had also been taken into custody, a number of them, after 1, 2, 3 days without having anything to pump into their system, they start showing withdrawal symptoms. So all of these have come together to establish that fact that definitely, even you, in your own imagination alone, in your own reasoning, there is no way you can conclude that somebody would go out of his way, a father, to go and kidnap somebody's child, to harm or to take the child into a forest where there is no shield, where there is no protection, anything, without food. One thing I noticed recently is even women getting involved in trafficking of these drugs, beyond even abusing it. Getting involved, I have seen, and I'm like, why did we get to this point? Now, that leads me to answering your question. There are quite a number of factors. One of the key things is socio-economic factors. There are quite a number of these things, socio-economic factors. Some of them face some challenges, and that lead them to
But the drugs are not cheap.
That's where I'm even going. But then what we also say is, look, even when you take this drug to suppress or to forget your pain momentarily, that doesn't solve the problem. When these drugs wear out from your system, the problem comes looking at you straight in the eye again. So how does that solve the problem? And over time, when they depend on these drugs, they develop health issues. These are the things we need them to understand. These are the messages we want them to get, that these drugs do not solve these problems you are trying to run away from. Instead, they compound your problem. And two, they give you develop health challenges over time, and at the end of the day, we know where that leads to.
You know, you remind me of a story I was often told, growing up. You don't tell lies because one lie leads to another lie. All right, so let's join Ijoma now and get to find out more on women using drugs. We'll be right back.
Jones for you on a close up. My nigga, mama, bamba, mabi. You want to chill with the big girls. The big boys. Who be that? Mama. Who they breathe? Mama, the mama. See my mama. 70 years for this mama.
In the past, scenes like this would make a news bulletin prominent because it was not common. But today, it is not the same. This act has become a frequent misdemeanor among young and older women, and it is no longer news that women now indulge in drug expedition, and it is worrisome. Drug abuse is a common global issue in today's world. Crime incidences like armed robbery, kidnapping, militancy, raping, bullying, and even cultism, which have become a challenge to internal security in all parts of Nigeria, are directly or indirectly connected to substance abuse.
As far as I'm concerned, it's becoming a pandemic because according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, 14.4% of Nigerians presently are using drugs. That's they are involved in drug abuse, 14.4%. And if you check the population of Nigeria, we're above 200 million. That means above 20 million people are abusing drugs. So that is a problem. And also, out of that number, 27% are young people. And in Nigeria presently, 1 in every 4 drug abusers is female. So we have the numbers are increasing. In fact, the speed at which it's increasing, if we don't do something about it, is going to become worse in the next couple of years.
Now, drug abuse, or call it drug addiction, among women has become a major national concern for both drug law enforcement agencies and gender rights advocates, who are keenly monitoring the trend of addiction shifting from men to women. in a rapid progression, and this calls for great concern.
The gender roles imposed on women is causing a lot of pressure. To be honest, women have family problems. A lot of women are dealing with mental health issues, and that's one of the causes of this drug abuse in women. Some women try to self-treat these issues by turning to drugs for solace. Like, for example, a drug like SK that has a calming effect on the nerves. When you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with anxiety, and in this society, it's frowned upon to go and seek help for mental issues. People think you're crazy.
From statistics, incidences of drug abuse among young girls in Nigeria is becoming frightening, especially among young women of childbearing age, who not only abuse pharmaceutical drugs like codeine cough syrup and over-the-counter drugs such as tramadol and Refenol, but are forming clusters of addicts who bully other girls into joining them.
The major reason why people fall victim to peer pressure is inferiority complex issues, emotional issues. They want to belong, they want to feel among, they feel inadequate, and some of these feelings, they've had them from childhood. Children that are confident don't fall victim to peer pressure. They face their studies, they finish school. So that's why one of the trainings we bring trainings on building your self-esteem, because we know that is the reason why children, girls, boys fall victim to this pressure.
Well, many factors have been linked to as why women are gradually pairing up with their men counterpart in consuming addictive substances. Some say it is experimentation or even curiosity.
Children are curious. Children have entered all kinds of problems because of curiosity. That is the age of discovery. So they want to discover everything. So in my opinion, this education should be taken to primary schools, because sometimes in secondary school, we're now dealing with the consequences already. It's no longer prevention because they are already hooked on it.
Since it has been established that there are tendencies for children of this age bracket to be exposed to drugs in the coming years, it will be proactive to formulate a gender-sensitive drug policies and programs that will target these tender ones and save them from this menace.
So part of what we do in the Women's Heart Foundation is advocacy. And I'm happy with NTA that you're creating awareness about this. We try to let the media know so that if everybody knows about this problem, then there'll be more drug education. Drug education is so important because it helps promote responsibility when young people know the effects of these things.
Though the issue of drug abuse among women in Nigeria is steadily gaining more attention, but it is still largely underreported, thereby shifting the much-needed attention for the establishment of more correctional and rehabilitation centers for women.
It's sad, so a lot of those are very young girls.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what their future will be like if this is not curbed at this moment. But then, speaking about young people and NDLEA, I'd like to know, do you have campaigns to the schools? I mean, you mentioned 8-year-old. I don't think I have seen a curriculum where such, is emphasized. Apart from maybe once in a while you go to do talks. If these children, I recall when my children were young, whatever the teacher says is sacrosanct. Whatever they learn was sacrosanct. I don't know. Do you go regularly to schools to educate them?
Absolutely, we do that, and we don't just do that alone because the scope of the work is enormous, huge, and so we need to work with a lot of other stakeholders, particularly the civil society organizations. We have quite a number of them, and we're happy, we're glad that with the activities of the NDLA, there's a growing awareness about this problem, and so we're having quite a number of stakeholders coming on board to join, and so we have quite apart from our own drug demand reduction directorate, which is also in all the states, all our state commands, and local governments where we have commands, where we have offices, they go out to these schools to do education. But beyond that, because we also have the Federal Ministry of Education as a major stakeholder, especially in National Drug Control Master Plan, which the 2021 to 2025 was launched last year. There, from interactions with the ministry, we've been able to establish that, okay, there is even a drug education in the curriculum of the schools. But then it's not standing alone as a subject. It's embedded in a number of other subjects like civics and some of these subjects. So now what we're doing is to get the schools to activate these subjects, these particular areas of these subjects, so that these children can learn and get to know some of these drugs and some of the dangers inherent in abusing them or taking them. So that we're doing, and we're happy that we're getting quite a number of stakeholders who are going all out, apart from our own officers and men of the drug demand reduction. And then again, I also know that this year we're having the chairman will be meeting with we'll be meeting with vice chancellors of schools, because that is where it's most rampant.
Universities.
So we'll be meeting with them, and from there we're getting direct information about what is happening on the campuses. And so this year the chairman will be meeting with the committee of vice chancellors, so that we can all work together to address to develop some strategies to work with them to address some of these things on campuses. And one of the issues, one of the panacea that the chairman had raised earlier was this drug integrity test. That is for those who are just coming, who are just being admitted as fresh students, or those returning from holidays back to school. When they know that they are going to be tested for drug, that restrains them. And for those that test positive, we do also advocate that they should not be rusticated or sent out of the school, because that compounds or worsens their problem. What we are saying is, for all of these universities, create a small rehab center within your health medical facilities on campus, so that when any student tests positive, take him or her aside, let him go through the rehabilitation process. There, he or she may have to lose a semester or even a session. That would serve as deterrent. Next time,
I can assure you, nobody wants to go to a rehab, because everybody will note you as, a victim.
Well, is it not better to be treated than to
be rusticated?
Yeah, because it's far better.
Really. What I mean is that once they know that's what happened, it would actually help them, not to get involved.
Yeah, because of
drugs.
the fear of stigmatization.
Yes.
We also advocate against that, because it's not something also good. We let people know that drug addiction is an ailment, just like any other ailment, just like your malaria, high blood pressure, or diabetes, that you go for treatment. You are not shy. You are not. You don't feel bad going to the hospital for treatment for all of this. So we also make people to know that these people, because a number of them don't go into this out of their own willingness. There are quite a number of factors. Yeah, so we should also not treat them or stigmatize them. We need to also show them some love, so that they can feel comfortable to go into any health facility to seek for help. That's what we encourage.
Okay, now I know that drug peddling, happens in diverse forms. And I was reading about one of your activities here in Abuja, where you actually arrested somebody who was peddling it through cookies and cakes and all of that. And I'm wondering, have you gone extra mile to maybe meet up with the Association of Bakers, for instance, or all these other associations that have those things, imputed in their listing, so that they can do drug integrity tests as well?
Absolutely. We all our commands have that directives to go, even including hotels and parks.
Okay.
They've been meeting with them. Now there are even some of these business premises even have our instructions to place signboards and postcards within their premises, warning people because you see, sometimes the owners of those premises may not even know the kind of businesses being conducted in their premises. So we warn them that in case some of these people are arrested within your premises, they may not be the only one going in for it. You may also be charged for conspiracy, and even your property may ultimately be forfeited to the federal government. So you also have to show interest in what is being done within your premises. And like I tell you that this past weekend in this Abuja again, our operatives raided some parks, and you'll be shocked at the kind of things discovered. And you now see people preparing what you call black currant sobo, in the local parlance called sobo. Yes, with drugs. You see, even to a ridiculous extent, or even preparing noodles, what we call indomie. There are pictures. We show them. I'm sure this weekend, by the grace of God, some of this will come out in the media when we release them to the public. We arrested a number of them in Abuja here, preparing noodles for people to eat, with drugs therein. So
Is it that these drugs are cheap? Or if I go to buy these noodles or the zobo, and the price will be higher for me?
Absolutely, they're higher. Not that they are really that cheap.
No. Do I know that there is something there, or are they just offering me something for free?
Where?
So the buyer is also
complicit. Yeah, definitely, because a number of them know that they even demand for it.
Oh.
Yeah, and a number of them place this order online, and that's why we have dealt seriously with them in Abuja here, especially the network that distributes this thing through online, through the dark web. We're getting into the dark web.
We're going to get into that web and online, but
early exposure to drugs can cause a child to feel emotionally and physically unstable. Substance abusing youths are at a higher risk of mental health problems, including depression, conduct problems, personality disorders, suicidal thoughts, suicide, academic failure, including dropouts. Taking unprescribed drugs or substance abuse among secondary school students in our nation is fast becoming a global public health concern, because most of the students involved are later addicted to these drugs that make them not to have resistance to the urge of using them. Availability of these substances within and around the school premises makes students get access to uncontrolled usage of these drugs that propel high burden of substance abuse among them.
The drug dealers, the peddlers, they take advantage of the gullibility of the youths among us, who are largely students. They hardly could discriminate between what is good and what is bad. So those who sell these drugs take advantage of them. They go nearer to school premises, sell the drugs. They get into school premises, sell the drugs. And again, the use of social media, internet, has exposed a lot of people to the use of drugs now.
For every action, there is an opposite reaction.
I think the influence of peer group is a very, very important factor, whereby the innocent school children, they mix up with other children from different home background without knowing the kind of habit they are bringing into school. And before we realize this, such an innocent student has been initiated into the act of drug abuse. Many parents these days, they don't have time to monitor and properly take care of their children. They will leave their various homes very early in the morning, only to come back very late in the night.
At home too, sending those young boys and girls to go and buy you common cigarette, you light it before them, buy you beer, and then you say, okay, taste it, to know how to eat. If those things are being discouraged, because they say charity begins at home.
They want to do experimentation out of curiosity, what is in this thing? I see people take it. I also want to take it to feel the way people feel. You see, children from broken homes are likely to go into criminal activities much more than those who are with their true parents.
These innocent young students and youths who are daily initiated into these chemicals and worrisome acts are going into it without prerequisite knowledge of the risk and negative impact these drugs have over their relationship with their health, peers, family, neighbors, environment, and the entire society.
Drugs now, as in the substance, these young adults in our secondary schools have biological effect, psychological effect, and social effect. Biological effect could include affecting some of the organs in the system. They can have liver failure, they can have kidney failure, can fall into a ditch, a gutter, break his head, fracture his hands and legs. Psychological effect, they begin to withdraw from their normal social routines. They self-isolate. Some of them go as far as attempting or ideating suicide, amongst other things. That is the psychological aspect. They become dysfunctional. Some become dysfunctional in school. Those who already have high grade scoring capacities, they begin to drop, their grades begin to drop, they begin to lose concentration, and they begin to indulge in ill social behaviors that they wouldn't have naturally done.
To put an end to this act of self-administration of drugs and substance abuse without regard to the consequence, parents, teachers, the society, and government must play their part by intensifying awareness campaigns on the dangers associated with the menace in order to save our greater tomorrow from the entanglement and effects of the drug abuse.
Parents, we must all sit up, do our jobs, because if we don't, we get to lose our children. Some people are writing in some questions and contributions for you. Let's see much, pretty much we can take here. It says, good morning, ma and sir. I love your program so much, and especially about the topic drug abuse this morning. I just want to suggest all the illegal drugs dealers should be given proper education about drug abuse. But anyway, I have an ongoing program on YouTube as well. Okay, he's trying to advertise his own as well. And somebody here says, dear presenters, the major cause of drug abuse is lack of parenting. That's Tijani from Taraba State. Tijani, you just nailed it, because if we catch our children young, we can remedy a whole lot. Good morning, ma. Thanks for this program. Drug abuse is killing us and causes a whole lot, from prostitution, violence, criminal activities, rape, manslaughter, all of them. This person writing from Ilori, it says Shola from Ilori. Let's see if we can take pretty more on here. It says the best way to curb this is to open anti-drug abuse clubs in schools. That's Ansela Mozodima. A little bit in a quick note. Celebrities we look up to a lot of times get involved in this. And I know recently you just nabbed someone, the general. You want to speak more on that and the influences?
Yeah, it's like somebody mentioned, I think, in the course of the reports from the other parts of the country and also from the mails we are reading, what you call social media influence on a number of people. Here you have a number of celebrities and young minds, influential young minds, who have large followership on the social media. You see, we need to plead with them that they should understand that they are role models to millions of other young people. And so they need to moderate the things they do on social media so that they will not mislead millions of their followers who look up to them as role models. We are pleading with them because whatever they do not affect them. Whatever the things they do not affect them alone. These things affect their followers. A lot of their followers are misled. Unfortunately, the young man you just mentioned, the general, you see, practical case, in that case, he was not even the target of the operation where he was arrested. Our men went into a drug joint to bust it, in the night when they know that the operators were busy selling drugs. And in the course of that, they were able to chase some of those operating that drug joint and
There was one of them.
into his house. And ultimately, when they searched the house, they found some of these drugs and even paraphernalia for drug use. Well, as the case is now, he's in for it and he has already been charged. I'm sure by Monday or so, he'll most likely be taking his plea in the court.
Wow. That's not good. And you take time to build your image only for you to, burst it to bubbles in a little while. Let's keep being on the right path at each given time. Thank you for coming on the show. And we'll just tell you again, hang around there because we'll just be needing you anytime soon. Drug abuse is something we must all be all hands on deck to ensure that we eradicate
Definitely
completely.
would always be available, for this, so that we can expand the conversation and get as many people to understand these things and join the wagon.
All right, we've been speaking with the Director of Media and Advocacy of the NDLA in the person of Femi Baba Femi. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a break now. We'll continue. Drug abuse and its burden here in Nigeria. We'll still be on focus. Don't go away. All right, drug addiction is something that we speak of, but sometimes we do not even understand the enormity of it all. Tete will be guiding us on drug addiction and therapy. Let's see it.
Addiction, simply put, is the inability to stop using a substance or engaging in a behavior even though it is causing psychological harm. Addiction has been recognized as a chronic disease, mainly characterized by drug seeking and use that is difficult to control, despite the knowledge of its harmful consequences.
How do these substances affect our system? When we abuse substances, because addiction is as a result of an abuse of a substance or a drug. So when we abuse these drugs or when we take them indiscriminately, they cause an upsurge of some hormones to the brain. And what does this do to the brain? It causes the brain to misinterpret its functions, and then it leads to compulsion. As there's a compulsion to use that substance, of which when you don't get that substance, you begin to malfunction, you lose control when there's a limited intake of this substance.
It is common for drug addicts to be categorized as those who use common illicit drugs, such as heroin, cocaine, and narcotics of that sort. But it goes far beyond that. Various everyday prescription medications can also turn one into an addict.
A major class of these drugs are mostly drugs that are used for management of pain. People get addicted to analgesics, pain relievers, when they use them over time, and they will not be able to maintain a normal pain threshold when pain comes around. So, and one of the popular ones is the codeine. We are all aware that the codeine-containing cough syrups have been a menace in our society, and people have abused them over time and have become addicts and have found themselves in situations where they cannot function properly without them.
There is always a genesis to this self-destructive journey towards addiction. Some could be by accident. Some take that deliberate first step by indulging in what is called recreational drug usage. Whatever the case may be, it never ends well for both the addicts and those closest to them.
People who have mental health disorders always resort to abuse of substances, and thereafter they become addicts. And a classical case of a mental health disorder is depression. People who fall into depression always resort to abuse of substances. And of course, there's the not too popular one, peer pressure. Yes, there's a lot of peer pressure around that leads people to abuse of substances, and invariably they get addicted to these substances. So it's important you know your crowd, you know the crowd you follow, and know exactly who you're hanging around.
Peer pressure is almost always associated with the company one keeps from a young, impressionable age. That is why it's very important to pay close attention to members of the society who fall into the adolescent bracket.
As you all know, drug abuse and addiction is a problem in the Nigerian society and at the world, in the whole world at large. So, coming to these schools and talking to these children, sensitizing them, creating awareness, doing drug education for them will bring about some sanity and will prevent a lot of problems as far as drug abuse and addiction is concerned.
We need to strengthen our regulatory systems to ensure that uncontrolled access to these drugs could lead to addiction. So it's a call to each and every one of us because it's everybody's problem and the solution lies in everybody's hands.
A healthy mind is one that is clear and free from any chemically induced manipulation by way of drug addiction. And healthy minds are what we need towards a stronger, better, and clearer future.
Clap for yourselves.
Okay, still on drug abuse and its burden here in Nigeria. That's the burden on me and as well as on you. Let's move on to Edo State. It's amazing. It's amazing that they have an illicit drug market. Can you believe that? Let's see it.
Illicit drug trafficking and abuse by people, especially the young minds, has over the years been of great concern considering the danger it portends to the society.
If you are taking a prescription drug and you're taking it above what the doctor has recommended, that is considered drug abuse. And that's one for legal drugs. Now for illegal drugs, drugs which are prohibited by law, known to cause bodily harm to the individual or can be disadvantageous to society, is also termed drug abuse. The consequences of drug abuse are varied to the individual itself and then to society.
The Edo State National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLEA's records indicate that cannabis sativa are cultivated in a large number of arable lands.
In 2021, 25 cannabis farms were identified and destroyed, measuring 49.58966 hectares. We arrested a total of 351 suspects, comprising 248 males and 103 females, and seized a total of 26,459.078 kilograms, that is 26.5 tons, were cut out of supply. Notable of all last year was the discovery of 4 clusters of warehouses, cannabis warehouses in Uzeba, housing about 16,344 bags, weighing 233,778 kilograms.
What accounts for the increase in demand for illicit drugs, despite its debilitating effects?
One of the main reasons is frustration. A lot of persons, especially young persons and even some elderly persons, are frustrated. They just find that they are unable to make ends meet. Some of them end up on account of peer pressure in wrong company.
The one that is in drug, they introduce those one that is not in drug into drug taking. That is the abuse that is going on.
The fight against illicit drug trafficking and abuse has been an age-long fight. What are concerned authorities doing wrongly to curb the menace?
The only way for government to do is to address it properly to the grassroots, from moral code, from family, from community, from the local head to the state. When we get it right in that place, drug trafficking, cultists, or every form of thing that damage the youth life, you see it will reduce drastically.
The relevant authority have to make sure they stand up to do the needful at the time. If not that, I bet you what is going to happen now in 10 years.
When anybody is caught abusing drugs and they are penalized, they face the consequences of the law.
What punishment does the law stipulate for culprits of illicit drug trafficking and abuse.
Imprisonment is there, deny your freedom, confiscate the goods, and you pay repatriation. And anybody that is directly or indirectly party to, vicariously liable, should equally be added to the offender and treated judiciously.
What plans are in place to mitigate the trend this year?
We seized over 1 million tablets and capsules. Crossing through Edo State alone with drugs is a risk that I don't advise anybody to take. We are out for them and we'll deal with them. My appeal is just for the society to cooperate with us. Say something when you see something.
In Edo State, we have a drug control committee. His Excellency has actually asked that we reorganize the committee and reposition it to do the work it's meant to do.
With the cancerous problem of illicit drug trafficking eating deep into the society, it is imperative that key players and other relevant actors swing into action and redouble on efforts to curb the scourge.
I see lots of mails here, a lot of people condemning drug abuse and of course commending NTA for bringing this up. We'll take your messages some other time, but for now we're saying bye-bye. And don't forget, don't say government should do this, government should do that. We all have a role to play, especially if you're a parent. Do you know where your child is? Do you know who the children or your children's friends are? It's important to find out who they are, what is their pedigree, what is your parents' attitude towards childcare. That way you also protect your own child. I'll see you again tomorrow bright and early. Drug abuse, it's a no.